And Brandon, let's close out the podcast talking a little bit of football, moving away from the hardwood, going to that nice grass, maybe that nice Kentucky bluegrass, or let's be honest, most fields nowadays, it's that nice AstroTurf that feels, actually, by the way, it does feel really good to march on AstroTurf, as I was in marching band in high school and college. It is like walking on pillows or like clouds when you march on AstroTurf compared to actual grass, because there's no bumps and it's nice and flat and it's nice and squishy. And yeah, it's really nice. So if you've ever walked on AstroTurf, you know that it's nice to walk on. I've never been hit, so maybe being hit and driven into it like a football player kind of hurts.
It sure doesn't feel great.
But
sure,
I've never done that. I've only marched on it and roll stepped on the AstroTurf. But what we were talking about today is NFL draft. We're taking a look at one of the quarterbacks in the NFL draft, and that is Drew Lock, because we've talked ad nauseum, especially on the onside kick, about Kyler Murray. It's like every mock draft, Mark and I go, well, we're talking about Kyler Murray again. I know you guys don't want us to talk about Kyler Murray yet again, but he's intriguing, so we talk about him. And then we've talked enough about Dwayne Haskins, but a guy gaining steam as we get closer and closer to the draft at the end of April is Drew Lock. And I was reading a article from Todd McShay, and in it, he talks about the possibility of Drew Lock being a top 10 pick. And this is exactly what he says. With Arizona interested in taking Murray at 11, a handful of teams will be interested in trading for Josh Rosen. Then it becomes Haskins versus Lock, and there are teams in the first round that prefer Lock over Haskins right now. The Missouri quarterback has met with or has plans to meet with all of the QB-needy franchises, and he has plans to have a second meeting and a workout with the Dolphins. With his smaller 9-inch hands, ideally, he ends up in a dome or a warmer weather situation, but I haven't seen any issue with weather on tape. Lock marries confidence with the ability to relate with his teammates, and a team will like that. Murray has a natural instincts, and Haskins has incredible football intelligence, but teams will feel comfortable with who Lock is and his full resume. Don't be surprised if you start hearing more top 10 buzz for Lock. I want to ask you, Brandon, plain and simple, when we get to the draft April 26th, first round, will Drew Lock be a top 10 pick?
Where are the Dolphins at?
They are outside the top 10. So in order for him to be a top 10 pick, a team like the Dolphins or the Redskins would have to trade up in order to get him.
Then I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. If the Dolphins are not willing to trade up and trade into the top 10, I'm going to say that he doesn't go.
Okay.
Because I think that there's, again, as we've talked, I think that there's so many defensive players that are really good that teams are going to try and get. And this could all change. Again, if the Miami Dolphins, trade into the top 10, and I understand that the Miami Dolphins, as I'm sure you and Mark have touched on as well, in the onside kick is the fact that, they're going to wait till 2020 for Tua. The Miami Dolphins do not have time to wait. The Miami Dolphins are not a good team. They need to find a quarterback now, and they can do it. They can do it with Drew Lock. I think he's a really good quarterback. I like Drew Lock very much. I think that everything that you mentioned in that little excerpt is completely spot on. He's got an incredible cannon for an arm. He moves well. He can roll out of the pocket, and he's got great athleticism. His mobility is good. His mobility is actually better than Haskins. So if you're looking for something that, if it puts him over Dwayne Haskins, maybe that does. Some people would say Dwayne Haskins didn't move enough, but if he did, he would still be good. There's that, but Lock, I just don't necessarily see him in the top 10, though, Because, Ricky, actually, run down the top 10 teams
So,
in terms of where they are right now. No trades, obviously, anything like that, but where are they?
Here's the top 10. So at number 1, the Arizona Cardinals. Number 2, San Francisco 49ers. Number 3, New York Jets. Number 4, Oakland Raiders. Number 5, Tampa Bay Bucks. Number 6, New York Giants. Number 7, Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 8, Detroit Lions. 9, Buffalo Bills. 10, Denver Broncos. Because I'm on the opposite side of you. I think that he will be a top 10 pick. There's a team trading up for him. That's what I think. There will be a team that trades up for him.
I'm telling you, if the Miami Dolphins were to trade up, then yes, but I don't. So much has been talked about that. Oh, the Giants are interested in Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
Would he?
There's two options for a trade up.
But I also wonder here. So for the Denver Broncos, Joe Flacco is not a long-term fix.
Bingo, they could trade up too.
They could be a team that's trading up a little bit, or if he fell to them at 10, Joe Flacco is a guy who's around for maybe another year. For this year, maybe another. But he is not their long-term fix. They're going to have to find a guy in the draft. And that could be possibly this year. The Denver Broncos do have young talent. They have a really good running back. They've got some young wide receivers that are looking like they could really turn into something good. So they're putting some pieces together. They just need a guy who can get them the ball and score some points. So I will turn it over to you for your thoughts, but I'm a little hesitant to say that no, he'll be outside of the top 10, but I could very well see a trade happening to get him.
Here is why I feel like a trade is going to happen. Is number one, I'm reading an article today, and this is from MiamiDolphins.com, and it's written by I hope it's Alan, Alaln, Alan, right?
Aln. Yeah,
so Alan Polpart. And what the article says is Chris Greer, who is the GM for the Dolphins, all options on the table for future quarterback. And the article goes on to say that now that the Dolphins have their bridge quarterback, because they've traded Ryan Tannehill, he's not going to be here. They've signed Ryan Fitzpatrick to, I believe it's just a 2-year deal that they have Fitzy for. They can draft a guy like Drew Lock, let him basically maybe Patrick Mahomes it, where he sits a year, maybe sits 2 years while he develops, and they could go ahead and do that. They don't have to wait for Tua. The exact quote from Greer, the GM, says, I would say all options are on the table. I wouldn't say that we wouldn't trade up. We also know that that's the key for any franchise moving forward. So if there is a guy there that we like this year, that we feel we need to go be aggressive, yeah, we'll be aggressive trying to do that. But we'll also be smart about it. There is also a limit to what you should do as far as being smart about it. People made a big deal about 2020, and that's also where the market has taken us as far as acquiring those picks. The comp picks as well. So we'll have a lot of flexibility to do stuff, whether it's this year's draft or next year's draft. So they're kind of keeping the options open.
Yeah, but they're not showing their hand at all.
But also, exactly, this is smokescreen season.
Yeah.
And the reason I feel they're going to trade up is because there was a little bit of a smokescreen dropped in early February that I wonder if it catches fire in the last month before the draft. And that was Bob Quinn, the GM for the Lions, basically said this, talking about the number 8 pick. We'll consider any position in the draft at this point in time, whether it's the 8th overall pick or we have multiple picks in the draft. We're in a position now with the 8th overall pick that the whole draft board is really wide open to us. We're not going to really eliminate any prospects, meaning could they take a quarterback at number 8, even though they have Matthew Stafford. And for me, I look at that and I go, Arizona will probably take Kyler Murray. Do I think they should? No, that's a different convo for a different day. I'm not drafting for them. They'll probably take Kyler Murray. San Francisco's got Jimmy G. The Jets have Sam Darnold. The Raiders, yeah, we've kind of thrown back and forth, whether it's me and you, whether it's me and Mark, about is John Gruden married to Derek Carr? Well, if Kyler Murray's not there, he's going to continue to date Derek Carr, and Derek Carr will continue to be the Oakland Raiders quarterback. Tampa Bay, the whole reason they said they brought in Bruce Arians was that he wanted to work with Jameis Winston and wasn't for trading and getting rid of Jameis. So I don't see them taking a quarterback. Then there's the Giants. Apparently the Giants really like Dwayne Haskins, but anything can happen last month of the season. Jacksonville, not going to take a quarterback. They just gave big money to Nick Foles. Detroit's the wild card. Buffalo has Josh Allen. Denver is also a wild card. So looking at that, I think what could happen is Miami might sit there and go, there's only two things we can do. We can either trade up and get Drew Lock this year, or we can try to go for Tua next year. The third option, which is a far out for me, is if they want to say, hey, with our future picks, like later in the draft, they have the 48th pick in the second round. If they think a Will Grier will be there and want to take a Will Grier. But if you really like if they have 2 interviews with Drew Lock and really like Drew Lock, go get Drew Lock. And the team I think that they are going to trade with is the New York Jets. The Jets have basically said, we're open. You want to trade for that third pick? Go ahead, come get this pick. And I think if Drew Lock goes in the top 10, it will either be the first option, Miami trades up to 3 to get him. The reason why they trade up to 3 is because they won't know for sure who the Giants like, and they might be afraid the Giants might take him at 6. And if they think the Lions and Broncos are going to take him at 8 and 10. If they think all 3 of those teams could possibly take Drew Lock, or one of them could, they will trade up to 3. Now, the thing you got to look at, the asking price for the 3rd overall pick, we just saw it last year when the Colts traded their pick. The Jets traded up from 6th to 3rd, and the Jets gave up their 6th overall pick, so they swapped firsts, 2 second-round picks, which were the 37th and the 49th, and then they gave up a second-round pick as well. If you look at Miami, they have a lower first-round pick. They have the 13th overall pick, and they only have 1 second-round pick, which is 48. So for me, if they want to move up to 3 based off of what we saw last year, if I'm the Jets, I'd be like, I want your first, I want your second, I want your third, and I want your first next year. That is what they would have to give up to move from 13 to 3, and that will be the question they will have to ask. Is the price too high to move up for Drew Lock? And if it is too high, then okay, we will take our luck next year with Tua, and if we don't get Tua, we'll take our luck next year with, I'm forgetting his name, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence from Clemson.
Yeah.
However, the thing I will say, Miami fans might say I'm wrong, but with Ryan Fitzpatrick as your quarterback, you might win too many games to get Tua next year.
But then you have to look at who he'd be throwing to, and then you're no longer worried.
I mean, in Tampa, they had what, Mike Evans. Mike Evans.
They
and
got
Deshaun
playmakers
Jackson.
in Tampa.
Yeah,
they just had someone who couldn't
and
do
O.J.
crap.
Howard. You're right. Proven wrong. Lawyered. I've been lawyered. Go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't put up Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki against.
When you're wrong, you just gotta say you're wrong and move on, Brandon. Go ahead.
I guess if I'm Miami, you're really gambling for next year, because what you said kind of said it all. If they're going to say, okay, we're going to stay where we are, we're not going to go for a quarterback this year, we're going to bypass that, even if they have good options out there. Well, we'll just go for Tua next year. Well, then if they don't get Tua next year, then we'll go for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't get Tua, your Trevor Lawrence is great, but as we know, but if you're saying you're not going to go for a quarterback this year because we're waiting for Tua, then what happens if you don't get Tua? What happens to your fan base? They hate you already. They're not going to be any happier if you don't go and get Tua. If you wait a whole year and you say you're going to go get Tua, then you win, like you said, too many games. You end up being 6-10. That puts you right back again at 13. Tua's not there at 13. Lawrence isn't there at 13. Then guess what? How much you're going to have to give up? If you thought you were going to have to give up a first, a third, a whatever for Drew Lock, you're going to be giving up your left leg, your right arm for Tua and Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's how risky and how much of a gambler do you want to be? Because you're not losing if you go get Drew Lock. You're not. I think that you're losing if you pass up on an opportunity to get a good quarterback this season in the draft to possibly lose out on not getting one of the great ones next year.
And like the thing I'm looking at too is Miami next year does not. They're not the Oakland Raiders. They don't have multiple first round picks next year. So the question you got to ask yourself is two things. First off, where do you see your record this year with Ryan Fitzpatrick? Because to me, when they signed Ryan Fitzpatrick, the thing I saw from that signing was, all right, they're not going to tank. They don't they're not going to lose. They're not going to be the Arizona Cardinals and only win what? Arizona won 2 games this year? 3 games this year. I gave them, I was a little low on the Arizona Cardinals. They're not going to win 3 games. I could see them being 2 wins less than they are now, 1 win less, so in that 6-5 range. That means you're between, if we're going off of this year, you're between the 5th pick and the 11th pick. That's a wide range. That's a wide range to be in. Like Tampa Bay, who had Ryan Fitzpatrick for some games and Jameis Winston for others, won 5 games. So I could give Ryan Fitzpatrick in Miami 6 games, 5 to 6 games. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to do the same thing. Now I know the division is tougher, but that's a different story for another day. I just don't see, unless here's another option. They play it by ear, where they let the Giants make their pick. When the Giants, let's say the Giants pick Dwayne Haskins, pick up the phone, call the Jaguars. Hey, what do you want for the 7th pick? All right, it's too high. Click. Let the Jags make their pick. If the Lions don't go quarterback, hey, Buffalo, what do you want for your pick? And that's what that might be the option of we might not see a trade for Drew Lock from the Dolphins until draft night.
But that's also why I'm saying that there's teams in front of them that aren't necessarily going to take a quarterback.
And
so
is it a smoke
sometimes
screen?
they can also stand pat and still end up getting their guy if they want him.
See, and here's
But now if the Giants, I'll just let me say this really quick point and then we'll throw it to you, is that if the Giants now take Drew Lock, then I'm wondering, okay, if they take Drew Lock, is there going to be
what's wrong with Haskins?
What's wrong with Haskins? And is there going to be another team then that changes their strategy because they're like, whoa, there's Haskins, let's get him.
Washington.
And boom, and then everyone's gone.
Well, and that's the question I wanted to throw your way. You say other team, not even if Locke is taken, just other team in general. The Washington Redskins are the other team I could see sitting there.
And where are they?
They are 15. So they're 2 picks lower than the Dolphins. But they've got Case Keenum. Case Keenum is not as good in my mind. Well, he was good in Minnesota. I'm not going to take away.
He was a saint in Minnesota.
He was a saint in Minnesota. No pun intended. Sorry, Jake. But like, the thing that I look at was maybe the Minnesota year was just lightning in a bottle. Could have just been him and, like, Pat Shurmur knew he fit in that system maybe. Like, I don't know how to look at that one because he wasn't what he was in Minnesota with Denver. So I'm not high on him going into Washington. I'm higher on Fitzpatrick in Miami than I am Case Keenum in Washington. And if I look up really quickly the contract details, Case Keenum's done at the end of the year. Drew Lock, contract-wise, would be perfect for the Redskins because they could have him sit, wouldn't have to worry about Case Keenum at all. He just leaves at the end of the year, and then, boom, Drew Lock, it's your show here in Washington. That's another thing that Miami would have to fear is if they kind of sit on their hands a bit and wait for this all to unravel, could a team like Washington go, screw it, we're going to trade with the Jets. We're going to trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars because that price isn't too high for us because we know we need a quarterback and we have some better weapons here in Washington than Miami has in Miami, although wide receiver could be a first-round need for the Redskins this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as we approach the draft and get closer and closer, we're going to start to see teams, especially after they've, now that they've done their pro days, they've had their, individual meetings with teams and their private meetings with teams and everything like that. Teams are getting a better sense of what exactly they want and what we're getting from Miami with what you read earlier. Mm-hmm. It's an absolute smokescreen. You know what? Everything you said, Ricky, you know what it actually was saying? Nothing. It said nothing. It gave nothing away.
You don't think they're gonna
pointed to nothing.
So you don't think they're going to draft a quarterback this year?
Miami?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're not drafting a quarterback.
They're not trading up for one.
I'm not saying that either.
Okay.
I'm saying that Miami gave nothing away.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's a complete smokescreen. They can say all they want about, well, we're not saying that we're doing something. We're also not saying we're not doing anything. That's the typical we have to say this type of deal because we're not going to say that we're going for one. They're giving away their strategy. Team strategies will start to come together in the next couple of weeks as we get closer to the draft, which, gosh, it is coming right up. But
April 26th.
I think that Miami would be silly if they did not go for a quarterback this year. I really do. I think that they would be silly if they didn't go for one. They need to start winning. And I know that they've got Ryan Fitzpatrick in that position right now, and they have him as a possible holdover while they wait to get a Tua or a Trevor Lawrence next year. But again, like you said, I want to go and hit that point home, is that Ryan Fitzpatrick might give you too many wins, and then you're going to be in a really tough spot and have to pay the world and top dollar for the number one or number two quarterback in the draft. Do you want to do that? Are you willing to give away potential future picks, which personally, as a GM, I would be. I hate picks. I want players. But I think that's going to be the thing. Sure.
Let me throw this trade out at you. You are now the GM of the Jets.
Okay.
Would you take this trade? Redskins call you up. Ring, 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 ring. Pick up your phone.
Oh.
We're role playing here on the podcast.
Okay.
Ring, 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 ring.
Hello?
Hey, Brandon, how's it going? Ricky here. I got
You need something, don't you? I need
something. I need something from you. So I got a trade for you.
Why'd you hang up?
Tell me what you think.
I
got my phone right here. Only because I didn't want it, knowing my luck, I'm talking in it and it's messing up the recording. But so I got a trade for you here, Brandon. I want your number 3 pick. I need it badly.
I know you do. I saw what you guys did last year.
And here is the trade I've got for you. I'm going to give you our first, so we'll swap. You'll come down to, 15. We'll go up to 3. I'm going to give you our second round pick, which is the 46th overall pick. And then I'm going to give you a second round pick, or third round pick, which is the 97th. So I'm giving you 15th, the 46th, and the 97th, and I'll give you Josh Norman as well. To let me move right up to 3.
Can you give me that one more time? I gotta give it to my guys here in the back room so they can tell me yay or nay.
You get our first, which is the 15th. You get our second, which is the 46th. And you get our second. We have 2 third-rounders, a 77 and a 97. You get our 97 because I'm throwing in Josh Norman as well. Just to get your 3rd overall pick.
You got a deal.
Is that too much to ask? Like, is that too much to offer for the Redskins? Because I was looking at it. Josh Norman, are the Redskins necessarily going to be a winner in his last 2 years? He is now turning 31. He might be someone that the Jets could use a little bit more than the Redskins, and the Redskins could move up without giving up future first.
That's a deal. That's a deal for me personally. I would take that deal almost right away.
Is one team getting screwed over, though?
I think that you would be giving up a lot.
Okay.
On the Redskins side. I think that you would be giving up a lot.
Flip it. You're Dan Snyder without the racism.
Thank you.
How would you change the deal if you were Dan Snyder then calling me? How would you change that? What would be fair to you if you were offering what I put out to the Jets? What would be fair to you?
First, our
15th overall pick.
15th overall pick, first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Our first third.
The 77th.
And then maybe throw in a player.
So 15th, 77th, Josh Norman.
That's what I would do.
Like, and that is something that I just kind of off the top of my head.
So then you still have your second.
Mm-hmm.
You still have a third.
Mm-hmm.
And you're alive. You've given, I think, good value over to the Jets.
Yep.
But you're not killing yourself.
Yeah, and
again,
the only
Norman,
thing,
can you win without him? Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
But are you, like you said, are you going to be a contender in a playoff team while he's there? And could you get rid of him? And I'm not sure of his contract, but I'm sure it's
2 years.
Dollars.
It is, so he's got 11 million. So his base for this year is an $11 million with a $3 million signing bonus. Next year it goes $12 million and $3 million.
I mean, I'm not sure what the hit would be.
14.5 and 15.5.
I'd give away the contract. I'd get rid of it. I'd take it off the books if I could.
Because I mean, you get him for this year, next year, and if you're the Jets, you can then. And here's what I'm thinking: if I'm the Jets, then of like, okay, 3rd overall. Now the decision you would have to make is they've said they were open to it, but would you want to pass on a pass rusher? Like for me, top of my board in my last mock draft was Quinnen Williams or Josh Allen. Do you want to give up on one of those 2 guys at 3 in order to get Josh Norman, a 3rd round pick later in this draft, and move down to 15? However, if you move down to 15, there might be a guy like Marquise Brown still available. You might be able to get an Ed Oliver if you're looking for that defensive tackle. Depending on where you're going.
You're talking about if you're the Jets now.
Yeah. Like you can move to 15 and still get some value from where you're at because of how deep this draft is defensively and because there could be wide receivers there for you to give Darnold someone to throw to.
That's exactly where I'd be going. Because, yes, you're probably not going to get Quinnen Williams if you're at 3 because I think he's number 1. And if he's not number 1, he should certainly be number 2.
In your mind, Kyler Murray's getting drafted number 1 by the Cardinals.
Exactly.
So that means the 49ers, do they go Nick Bosa or Quinnen Williams?
And if you're smart, you go Quinnen Williams. But I think then, yes, maybe there's a possibility for him at number 3, but I would definitely be fine going to 15, getting that if that's the phone call, and that's what's offered, getting that, and then getting a wide receiver. You need playmakers. You now have Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
You need more playmakers. You need so you've got Robbie Anderson, who can be real, real good, great threat. But then after that, you've got just kind of mediocre guys. You need another guy in there who's going to make some noise on your team and definitely help out Darnold. because you're trying to put this team together and give the Jets an offense. You've done it with Bell. You have a good quarterback in Darnold. You've got your quarterback of the future. Now he's got to play with some pieces and give him something.
And the thing that I will throw out there, this will be one of the last things before we give just kind of our final statements. Why Miami, if they want a quarterback, if they want a quarterback, and I know this has kind of turned into a lot of trade talk because that to me,
enjoy it.
Well, to me, if Drew Lock is going to be in the top 10, someone's going to trade for him. He's either someone's going to trade for him or the Lions, for some reason, do take a quarterback and go Drew Lock after the first two are off the board. Here's why, if I'm the Dolphins, the only way you're getting Drew Lock is if you trade up. I'm going to read off the teams after the top two that need cornerback as one of their top 5 needs. You ready for this?
Cornerback,
okay. Defensively. Like Josh Norman, and that's why the Redskins could offer this deal. The Jets at 3, 3rd overall need. The Raiders at 4, 4th overall need. The Bucks at 5, 2nd overall need. I'm going to skip the Giants because even though cornerback is their 3rd overall need, they take quarterback. Yeah. The Lions at 8, 1st overall need. The Bills at 9, 4th overall need. There are the Bills, the Lions, the Bucks, the Raiders, 5 of those teams that I listed between 5 and 10 all need a cornerback in some way or another, and the Redskins could offer that to them in Josh Norman.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that it really makes for an interesting scenario, and that's why this is always fun, and it's really fun to be able to talk about it. It's just, what is your...
Is it scenario or scenario? Because I've heard it 2 different ways.
Tomato on that one.
You said it, and I was like, I wonder which is the actual way to say it. I've always said scenario.
How did I say?
Scenario.
Okay.
I've heard people say scenario, and I don't know the difference between the two.
There isn't one. But that's why this is fun and enjoyable to talk about. But it really comes down to, as a GM and as all the other masterminds in that room, it's what do you value the most? What do you need the most right now? Or what do you believe you need the most right now? What are you willing to part with? What are you willing to wait on? What can you absolutely not wait on? And that's where they've got all their boards. They've done all their homework.
War room.
Without a doubt, they know everything they believe they need to know about every player that they believe they'd like to have on their team, and then some. From there, it's just what is number 1 priority, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. That's going to be the number 1 thing.
This isn't the last time we're going to talk NFL draft, obviously, on the podcast, because it's basically like a snowball running down a hill, getting bigger and bigger until the end of April. Final thought, what happens to you? Number 1 is Drew Lock, a top 10 pick. And if not, where do you think he lands outside the top 10?
I don't know. I know that he is... At the beginning of this podcast, I said, no, I don't think he's going to be a top 10 pick.
Talking you into it.
You're talking me into it. I think that he's going to, I think he may end up being a top 10 pick. I'm just not sure where he will end up. But
there could be a sneaky team that moves up.
I think that we've talked enough and you've said enough on your side. I think that he could very well be a top 10 pick by a team that probably trades up to get him.
I mean, some teams we haven't mentioned yet. Broncos could trade up. I know they got Joe Flacco, but could trade up if they really like him. The Bengals. I know that many people have said, is it time to move on from Andy Dalton? If they really fall in love with him, they could maybe trade up for him. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. Panthers, do they kind of start feeling like, you know what, Cam is not going to be the future. We're going to let this contract ride out and then let it be that. My main 2 are if he gets in the top 10, he's a Dolphin, he's a Redskin. He's one of the 2, either outside the top 10, inside the top 10. I think he is a top 10 pick because I feel like one of those two teams, it's going to be kind of a bidding war between them. And who do they try to go with? Because the Raiders, I will throw them out. They're a team that they could trade because they've proven, hey, just give me all the draft picks in the world. Mike Mayock and John Gruden will try to hit on them as they go ahead and draft Colton Miller in the first round. Let's hope that was a John Gruden mistake and Mike Mayock doesn't make that same mistake for the Raiders like they did last year. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think. Is Drew Lock a top 10 pick in this draft? What do you like about him? What do you don't like about him? If he is a top 10, where does he go? If he's not a top 10, where does he go? Let us know down below. As well as if you're listening to the entire full podcast, let us know what you thought about the March Madness discussion we had, previewing also the Sweet 16 in this upcoming weekend, the NBA draft coverage that we had earlier in the podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Ricky Widmer, at Young_Swan19, at Most Valuable Pod. You can also hit us up on patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. New rewards, or new goals, I should say, revamped goals, giving you guys more bang for your buck coming April 1st. You can join us at the $10 tier, though. Every time you support us at that tier every month, you can join an MVP podcast of your choice, talking about what you would like to talk about. And also make sure to hit us up on Apple Podcasts. I keep wanting to say Apple iTunes, and that's not it. It's Apple Podcasts or iTunes. Please give us that 5-star rating. It really does mean the world to us. I want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. I want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.